We have with us Dr. Virendra Sangwan, and Sir is one of the doyens of cornea, and we request him to give his keynote address, and the keynote address is on post-operative dry eye management. Sir, all yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Partho. And I would like to thank All India Ophthalmic Society and its scientific committee for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Just let me. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Partho?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening again. And I'll briefly talk about the dry eye post-operatively. Just to give you a background about how the dry eye definition and the standardization happened over the years, in 1992, the first international conference on lacrimal gland tear film and dry eye syndromes were organized. And then, the major was TFOS DEWS workshop. And that was started in 2004. And then 2007, they published their first report. And then we started DEWS 2 in 2015 and published reports in 2017. The primary objective of that was to update the definition, classification, etc. And the main objective was to standardize the definitions, because the reporting of dry eye and its symptoms and its outcomes is very important that we all follow the same system. So major change was in the definition. The DEWS 1 definition is above, and DEWS 2 is defined. They define dry eye as multifactorial disease of ocular surface, characterized by loss of homeostasis of the tear film and accompanied by ocular symptoms, and instability of the ocular tear film, hyperosmolarity, ocular surface inflammation and damage, and neurosensory abnormalities play etiological role. I was part of the steering committee, and the amount of time we spent in just standardizing and agreeing on the wording of the definition, it took tremendous effort. And this was the first meeting we had in San Francisco as a steering committee members, 15 from different parts of the world, and a total of 150 clinicians, basic scientists, industry experts participated in this. And there were 11 subcommittees which worked on different aspects. I worked at that time on iatrogenic dry eye, and I'm today going to talk a little bit about that. Post-operative is one of the iatrogenic causes. So when we do surgeries, there is sometimes known unknown factors, like when we do such extensive surgeries on the ocular surface, we normally don't encounter a dry eye. See, we do extensive dissection of the corneal surface, epithelium, subepithelial plexus, conjunctiva, but I haven't seen a dry eye case in these patients. But it is known that the iatrogenic dry eye can be due to contact lens, topical systemic medications, and variety of surgeries that some of them we will discuss today. The pathophysiology of the post-operative dry eye is not very clear, but there can be risk factors, there can be undiagnosed pre-existing conditions, there can be pre, intra, and post-operative factors. Once the dry eye sets in, the cascade of events is exactly the same. My idea of showing this video is that this is such an extensive surface surgery, yet you do not see the dry eye post-operatively. On the other hand, you do a LASIK, you do PRK, you would, in certain patients, you will encounter symptoms. So, understanding the pathophysiology, the mechanisms is still a very gray area. In the ocular, in DEWS 2, we came up with the variety of these factors that, pre-operatively, there can be factors like which are listed here, the intraoperative factors. Especially one should pay attention to pre-operative medication, which are used for dilatation, if they are preservative-free or not too many medicine, not too often. And then post-operatively, I think the most important problem I see is too many medications used by surgeons. I generally use only steroid antibiotic for a week, and then steroids for 4 to 6 weeks. There can be predisposing factors or unrecognized conditions like blepharitis, mebomyelitis, which may be very subtle preoperatively, but if not paid attention to or if not addressed, that can be a problem. So before any surgery, pay attention to these areas, because it's very well known for cornea and external disease expert that blepharitis is an important cause of dry eye in the routine clinic, and it's grossly underdiagnosed, underappreciated, and undertreated. Similarly, mebomyelitis is another common problem, because these surgeries we generally do in elderly, most of the surgeries, and in those patients you invariably have underlying mebomyelitis, and if it's not treated, again that will create a problem post-operatively. Another aspect, defective spreading the tear film. This can be due to a small notch in the tear in the lid margin. There can be variety of other abrasions, and there can be blink abnormalities. So many factors that needs to go into in assessing patient preoperatively. The lid surgery is very common, again underappreciated, underdiagnosed cause of dry eye, and all these reasons which I mentioned here, listed here, these are the risk factor for development of dry eye following lid surgeries. Blepharoplasty is another surgery which is common and also causes dry eye, and therefore in the immediate post-op period, exposure is a major issue that needs to be taken care of. In the management of following this blepharoplasty, I think one should just follow the usual medical treatment, and if it is not addressed to, then the oculoplastic surgeon should plan or redo the surgery. There is another common, relatively common, not very common, but conjunctivochlesis in old elderly people, where there is a loose conch which affects the lid margin and the preocular tear film, and that can disturb the distribution of the preocular tear film. And in mild diseases, you may be able to, mild degree of conjunctivochlesis, you may be able to control with steroid and restasis, but in moderate to severe disease, you will need conjunctival resection along with amniotic membrane. So these are other surgeries where there is some postulation of the mechanism, like keratoplasty, conjunctival surgery, glaucoma surgery, VR surgery, strabismus surgery. And these things we had covered extensively in the DEWS 2 report. There was a particular section on iatrogenic dry eye. So I encourage those who are listening to refer to the DEWS 2 report for the detailed reading. One thing that all of us should understand, whether it is a dry eye in a patient without surgery or post-operatively, the inflammation sets in, and that inflammation then drives the instability of the tear film and leads to hyperosmolarity. And so irrespective of the underlying cause, inflammation is the driving factor. And therefore, the generic treatment would consist of some sort of pulse topical steroids, immunomodulatory agents like cyclosporin, and then LFA. This is an adhesion molecule which blocks LFA-ICAM interaction on the epithelial cells, and these are expressed in the inflammatory situation. So these are some of the treatments that may be very helpful when you encounter, but the main emphasis should be the prevention of the disease and recognizing the underlying factors. The areas of future research, which I think is that this is an area of dry eye that we don't understand much. And as I mentioned that, in LASIK and PRK patients, we may see more severe dry eye, where on the other hand, when we do a conjunctival surgery or a corneal surface surgery, we don't see unless you do a penetrating keratoplasty. So the research should be focused in that direction, and it should be clinician driven. Then only we'll find some solution to these problems. And use of medication, excessive, too many medications should be avoided. So in conclusion, the iatrogenic dry eye disease may be caused by topical or systemic medications, surgical procedures, and use of different agents used in the surgery. So therefore, appropriate before and after interventions are necessary, and use medications without preservative as far as possible if you are using the medicines more than 4 times a day. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Dr. Samar Prasad sir is here. So, Prasad sir, your comments, your views, and
No, after the keynote address, I should not comment anything. Shangwan is excellent and he has covered all the aspect of, rather prevention is more important than treating a post-operative dry eye. That is the keynote message to the common ophthalmologist.
Sir, I think a very basic question that we miss is the importance of the steroids in dry eye treatment. I think, as lay people, we need to know that when to give the steroid and when not to give the steroid, when the steroid has to be instituted and when it can be avoided.
If the dry eye, for whatever reasons, if it is moderate to severe, and how do you know it is moderate to severe? There are different grading systems. There are the OSDI scores and other things. But what I follow is, number one, the patient symptom. Number two, the surface staining, either Lissamine green or rose Bengal. I mostly do rose Bengal and the fluorescent staining. And if I find that the patient's symptom and the epithelial abnormalities match, in those patients, initially, I'll give topical steroid for 4 to 6 weeks. And when you are seeing the patient for the first time, or you are seeing as a referred from your colleague, I would like to give them the topical steroids along with lubricants. And if it is an underlying disease, say, for example, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, or if you have SJS, or if you have GVHD and so many other causes, then I may direct my treatment specifically to address those problems as well. And steroids should be used as a pulse dose, used for 4 to 6 weeks in tapering doses. And by that time, the surface can be rescued and use other agents to improve the functionality.
Suresh, sir?
Yeah, I agree with Virender as far as the use of steroids is concerned, that it is not something that we should run away from or be scared about. But typically, if I'm dealing with an aqueous deficient dry eye, most of these patients, I would put the patients, because I'm a great fan of cyclosporin topical. So I would put the patients on topical cyclosporin, and I would put them on 2 to 3 weeks of steroids in the initial phase, so that the burning stinging is less. And we know that the cyclosporin takes time. I may not continue for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, I would do 4 to 6 weeks in an unknown etiology, the sort of mixed picture where I'm not sure. Then and a patient who's extremely unhappy has gone to 4 or 6 doctors, and they've just been changing the brand names of the lubricants. So then I would put the patient, as Virender says, on a tapering dose for 4 to 6 weeks of the steroid, and ask them to stick with a particular lubricant and to stick with me for those 4 to 6 weeks till the steroids are on. So these are the indications for me where I would use steroids for a prolonged period. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Another very practical question, all of us are faced with is the cyclosporins per se. We have the indigenous ones, and we have the ones that are, that have come up and have been there for a very long time, manufactured by the MNCs. So do you think that between the cyclosporins, one is, of course, the percentage of cyclosporin. Next is the brand of cyclosporin. Do they really matter? Is it okay to give the indigenous brands, and is it, or would you rely more on the MNC brands?
Yeah, I think there is definitely there may be some difference in the quality and the availability of the medication. But now what I depend more often is tacrolimus eye ointment. So, and these are both, most of the Indian, most are Indian brands, and they are not very expensive, and dosing wise and convenience. So
Yeah.
at that time, use the tacrolimus, and I'm finding that they are very, very helpful. So Restasis is reserved for people who have chronic, moderate to severe dry eye due to KCS, for professionals, and for those who can afford easily, I would use for them. But the Indian brands of cyclosporin, particularly, I don't have any liking for one or the other. I would now practically 80% of the time switch to tacrolimus.
Okay, sir.
As far as cyclosporin is concerned, yes, Restasis is the first one out in the market, and the elegant study which was there, which showed they did try 0.0, the higher percentage, 0.1% as opposed to 0.05, and they found that there is not much difference. So the 0.05 is what I would use. I have never used the higher concentration. It seems to be a sort of cross between the highest, that is 2%, which I would use for allergy, and this. So it doesn't really help me. So I would use the regular 0.05%. The Indian brands, I now find some of them are coming up to the mark. They're doing well, especially those with the nanocellular technology, where they're using nanocellular particles. So the penetration is a little better and comparable to the market leader. So again, no particular choice, but if a patient can't afford, I would put them. But and their prices have also gone up, so they're not very cheap anymore. So I agree with Virendra that tacrolimus is by far the cheapest. It costs about 100 rupees or so and lasts for about a month, as opposed to at least 500 rupees for any brand of cyclosporin for a month's supply.
Partha, can I just
Can
make
I
a
ask you one
comment on it?
Yes. Yes, please.
Just
Yes,
one
ma'am.
comment. We have used 1% for dry eye because we got it made in our pharmacy, and we did not find that there was too much of a difference between, the commercial brand that is available and the higher concentration in dry eye. But we've used topical 2% for graft rejections, and
Perfect.
yeah. So if you go ahead, and also we've used it for topical 1% for VKC.
Allergy, exactly. That's exactly what I do. Yeah.
For those, it makes a difference, but for dry eye, I don't think you need to go higher. I completely agree with Dr. Sangwan that tacrolimus is a cheaper and a better alternative.
Dr.
Right.
Sangwan, may I ask a question, Dr. Partha?
Yeah, please.
I
Yes,
have found that in my practice, a lot of patients who end up complaining of watering and irritation in the eye after cataract surgery, especially, are people who have a small amount of conjunctivochalasis. And if we don't pay attention to that, I feel that is the one which troubles you often after
Yeah.
surgery. And it seems to get worse in patients who've been using preserved drops. So I feel preserved post-operative drops, especially if you're using lots of them, and missed conjunctivochalasis seem to be the two main things which cause, I feel post-operative unhappiness. आँख में चुभ रहा है, पानी आ रहा है. These two, if you take care of, I think in my practice, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely true. Conjunctivochalasis is grossly underdiagnosed.
So if we just look for it and treat it at the time of surgery, it's so much easier actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.